Welcome to the No Stages podcast, number 7. And what a great guest we have tonight. Alex ISALY is joining us. Alex, it's really great to have you back at RAAM this year.
It's great to be back. It's hard to believe that it's been 2 years. It seems like it was just yesterday we were crossing the line in Annapolis. So super excited for this year. Doing something totally different this year than I have in the past with my RAAM races. So I'm going to kind of venture into some new territory, which is exciting and a little scary at the time.
It's just a baby step towards RAAM solo.
That's what I heard. I know that. Well, it's either you go all in or you kind of put your toe in the water. I figured, you know what, I'm just going to put my toe in the water and see how it goes.
Well, I like the path you took, though. I think seeing RAAM on a relay is a great way to get into this sport.
Yeah, I agree. Just looking at past racers over the years, it's like, you have a pretty good mix where you've got riders that come in and, just say, I'm going all in and jump in with a full RAAM, or it's like you have the opportunity to kind of test it for a little bit and do raw. Obviously, looking at the results, it goes both ways, but I agree with you, George. Having an opportunity to do the full course, and that's what's great about raw. It's like the first 930 miles is, the first 930 miles of, it's in the first 930 miles of raw. So of RAAM. It's funny when I tell people and I'm like, yeah, I'm on the same course. We're going to roll into Durango and we make a right. We go right into a parking lot for a finish line, or we just keep on going, right? All the way to Annapolis. So yeah, it's going to be great.
Well, I remember the first time I did raw, I was like, oh, it's going to feel like I'm cheating because I'm not keeping on it. And I was like, it is so good to be done.
I know.
I love raw.
Yes. It's funny is that when I was kind of on the fence this year thinking, okay, do I put together a team this year to do RAAM, or do I just selfishly do raw? And the way I initially approached it was like, I'm going to do raw. It's only raw. It's only 930 miles. I felt like I was cheating myself. And the reality of what's about to happen here very soon has been sinking in, and it's like, okay, it's going to be pretty epic.
Yeah, somewhere out around that 500-mile mark, just remind yourself it's only 930 miles. It's good.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that too, Rick, because I've done a couple 500s. I've done the Hoodoo 500 a couple of times, and I've done that solo. So little less experience going into raw, for this distance, but it's like, okay, I know what I'm capable of doing at 500, but now it's like, I've got to double that. So, it's not just a couple of miles past 500, it's, almost, turning around and going back to Oceanside. So, there's a lot of big unknowns out there for me going into it.
I remember I did the 508 solo after doing RAAM 4-person twice, and finishing that 500 for the next 9 days. I was just thinking to myself, I'd find myself at work or whatever it was I was doing. It was like, if you were doing RAAM when you had started the 508, you would only be 3 days into it now.
Oh, yeah.
You would still be riding and have almost a week left.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's
mentally, that's such an eye opener.
Oh, I can imagine. I think it's going to put a lot of things in reality. You talk about, doing RAAM for 3 years, and all 3 of the years I've done it, twice as a 4-man team, one as a 2-man, and we've passed, solo riders out there on the course. But solo for RAAM it's next level. I mean, that is beyond a level that it's like for a lot of riders that are out there, and to think and try to, put into words and comprehend what they're going through and what it takes to do a race like RAAM, it's pretty amazing. So having the opportunity to go out and kind of test it a little bit for raw and see how 930 miles go, it's a nice opportunity to do.
What are you most looking forward to seeing again?
The finish line in Durango.
That's cheating, Alex. Come on now.
Oh man, I I am looking forward, believe it or not, getting into Arizona and then moving up into, Utah and Colorado. California is great. It's the start of it is a lot hillier. That I think it's interesting. It's like people think, well, you started in Oceanside and you get out to Borrego, it's only 88 miles. But when you look at the elevation climb getting out there, I mean, it's a pretty challenging start. And then you get into Borrego and it's you're kind of out in the desert. It's pretty flat. Hopefully you get a pretty decent tailwind going out there, but the scenery is not as exciting, so to speak, right? But you get out in Arizona, a lot of climbing, and then obviously up into the beautiful mountains into Utah and Colorado. So I'm hopeful that from a timing perspective, of the 3 RAAMs I've done riding through kind of that Mexican Hat area, that's epic. And I've been able to ride through it during daylight. So, hopefully this year I can do the same.
And then, what's your overall goal with the race?
Goal for me is, obviously I have a couple of different goals. Number one, obviously it's I want to, to finish is it to get to the finish line in Durango. My target goal is about 3 days. I haven't done this before, so I've never gone 930 miles, but I've done a lot of research. I've looked at a lot of past riders. I've looked at times. I've looked at the topography. I mean, I guess that's one of the advantages I have. I've done this course 3 times already, so I have a pretty good idea of conditions potentially and and the route. 3 days is ultimately my goal. Anything under 3 would be epic for me. I consider it a huge accomplishment. But also goals too. I just want to have fun doing this and really take it all in. I know sometimes being pretty competitive, and I made this mistake the first year I did it, was I was so hyper focused on the race and really wanting to do well that I was kind of like taking the race with blinders on. And I got to the finish line and we did okay, but I was like, man, like there were so many parts of the race, the experience, that I just was not fully embracing just because I was in the moment of racing. So that was a huge learning experience for me. Obviously the second year I did, it was a 2-man team. And then the third year, which was in 2021, we did really well. It's a 4-man team then, is that I've learned to really try to take everything in and embrace the entire race from the full experience. This year being a solo rider, I've got a phenomenal crew of 6. 4 of the crew members are coming back from my 2021 team. So we've got some experience this year, but it's one rider, I'm sure you can imagine when the logistics and the stress and the coordination of trying to caravan, a team of 4 riders and like 16 crew members isn't the easiest thing to do from a stressful standpoint. And, I told my crew this year, I'm like, let's just go have fun. You got 1 rider and 6 crew members, and we're just gonna have a good time and keep me safe and get me to the finish line. So I got some pretty big personal goals, but I think that they're accomplishable.
So Alex, I would love to hear what was going through your mind when you were rolling in on the parade finish of the escorted finish of RAAM in 2021. Were you thinking about doing it again? Were you thinking about what was in your head when you were rolling to the finish line?
Like the previous 2 years before that, thinking about doing it again. It takes a little bit of time, I think, doing a race like that, especially coming off the high. We did it in about 6 days and change with hours for 2021, and it was a great race. I mean, the conditions were not what I've experienced in the past, going through the unbearable heat, for the first 500 miles of the race. But in my mind, I'm like, wow, we did this and we did pretty well. And okay, let's do it again, for next year. So I love RAAM. I love everything about it. I get a bunch of crap from my family and everything. And they're like, are you going to be that guy who's 80 years old and he's going to be on a bike and he's training for RAAM? And I'm like, yeah, probably.
We hope so. We hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the seed for this year really was planted as you were finishing 2021.
Well, it was actually supposed to be for last year, So last year, unfortunately, I had a teammate who committed pretty early on, and we were going to do this thing as a 2-man race. And unfortunately, 4 weeks before, he decided to back out. So it was a pretty emotional, as you can imagine, a lot of emotions kind of went through that period of you get that close to a race, especially a race like this, it's really hard to kind of rebound off of it, just in terms of like, okay, what's plan B, right? You've got plan B for doing the race, but not really a plan B to say, I've been training for the last 3 months and getting ready to go do this thing as a 2-man team. And then 4 weeks before the race, my teammate decides that he's going to back out. I scrambled for a little bit to try to find another teammate, but as you guys know, in the world of ultra cycling, there aren't a lot of guys out there who, number one, do the sport, and for those that actually don't do it as much, aren't training just for the sake of training to do a race like this. So, last year I was planning on doing it, so unfortunately I had to, kind of put that on pause, and gave me an opportunity, to, okay, I'm coming back in 2022. At the time, I didn't know if I was going to do it, a team, 2-man, 4-man, or even consider, looking at doing it at Raw. So, yeah, it's hard to believe, though. It's been 2 years since I did RAAM. Time goes by really fast. I always tell people, especially like you get within that, say, 2-month window of the start date, it's like you go from kind of cruise control to all of a sudden somebody hits the fast forward button. You're like, oh crap, we roll out in like 2 weeks. So
I feel it every day.
I'm sure you do.
You bring up kind of an interesting point that a lot of people don't really maybe understand, which is the emotional effects of the race. So
Oh yeah.
obviously when you're racing, you have highs and lows on a daily basis because of what you're doing, the weather, the terrain, how good you feel. But even the before and after race, there's a lot of emotions tied up with people, with racers, crew. And, how do you kind of deal with your couple week lead up now, the race, the good and the bad, and then you kind of get a post-race feel? How do you ride that out?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rick. I can speak right now. It's, for me, we're just a couple weeks out from the race, and for me, there's this level of, I'm super excited, but at the same time, I'm incredibly scared, right? Well, scared's not a good word, but it's like this level of anxiety. So, they're both kind of feeding off of each other, leading up to it. So you go into this with a big adrenaline, rush, and you roll up to that start line, and you roll out and you're like, here we go. So then the mindset then goes from pure race strategy, right? And just staying healthy. And it's funny, I'll never forget the very first kind of like team and crew meeting that we had for the first RAAM there at the start line. And when the meeting got kicked off, I remember, and Rick, I think it was your dad who was saying that, okay, I know everybody here and all your teams and riders have this game plan that you're going to get all the way to Annapolis, and I can guarantee you by the time you roll into Annapolis, you're going to be at like plan D, right? So you go into it and things obviously change. So emotionally going through the race itself, you just have to, I think for a race like RAAM, it's always, expect the unexpected, so to speak, as you go through it. You just have to be adaptable to the conditions, and you never know what's going to happen. So you go through that, you're on a high, you go through all different types of emotions, from where, you're bawling your eyes out on the bike to you're just feeling like you're floating on the bike, right? So that's pretty crazy. Post race, it does take a little bit to kind of sink in, right? It's like you're coming off of the adrenaline, you're incredibly sleep deprived, you're tired, your metabolism is through the roof. You can't stop eating. But then when you kind of reset and you look back on it, and it's like, wow, it's pretty incredible to think about what you accomplished for a race like RAAM. And even, you know, I'm sure it's going to be a similar experience with Raw. So it's definitely a big emotional swing and a lot of phases you go through from, you know, before, during, and after.
And Alex, I got to say, I loved it when you said scared, because this is going to be my 14th time. And I have moments where I'm absolutely terrified and going,
Yeah.
what am I getting into again?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. No, I know. It's like at one point during the race, I'll probably start like looking around. I was like, what was I thinking? Right? Like, what was I like? Who made me do this?
It'll be that first right-hand turn up Surf Rider off the Strand, and you're like, what? Who put the climb in?
Oh, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
So, gosh, what are your plans following Raw? And I don't mean, you know, going right into RAAM, but how do you see yourself going through recovery for the summer?
Yeah. You know, it's recovery is going to be interesting for a race like this. You know, I based on experience that I've had in the past, I've probably not given myself enough time recovery afterwards. After the first year I did it, I turned around and I went out and I started doing a couple other bigger races. And, mentally I thought I was there, but, physically it just really wasn't. My recovery for this one obviously is to, probably take a little bit more time just to, allow my body to decompress. Obviously, you can imagine the stress that you put it through. It'll be on the bike, still. I still want to do a couple of races this year. I've already signed up for, 24-hour world time trial coming up in Borrego, which I'm super excited to do this year. So that's another big race on the calendar for me. I'm a pretty competitive guy. Probably do a couple of gravel races as well. It's something that I haven't really gotten into as much, but I definitely want to explore that as well. But recovery is essential, especially coming off of a race like this. But between just taking care of your body, obviously the nutrition's a big part of that as well. Just the quicker I can recover, obviously the better. But you never know. I mean, 930 miles, like I said, it's the first time for me for doing this, and I know what it's like doing the full RAAM. So, and that was with the team.
Well, Rick, I am really looking forward to talking with Alex next May 2024, about his first solo RAAM.
That's right. But coming off a superb performance down in Borrego Springs, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that might be in the future, George. So we'll see. I'm gonna take 1 year at a time right now.
That's a wise plan.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm going to ask a question to you guys because, obviously you've been doing this for a while. I know, George, you've done this race many times. Like, how do you see the race going this year? Obviously coming out of COVID, and we've all experienced the bumps and bruises. And, this year, I think we're out of it. But like, do you kind of see anything different this year? As far as the fields, the participation? Obviously, I'm seeing more international riders now coming because it's a little bit easier to get here, not cheaper, but there's a little bit less restrictions for travel.
Yeah, the field's pretty solid. It's a pretty diverse field. Still not as big as it was pre-COVID, but
okay.
You still got a lot of things going on in the world that people are, of course, worried about: tech layoffs, inflation, wars overseas. But it is good to see the international fields back. And what's nice about it is that's really what this sport is about. And it's really fun. I think I'll speak for George on this, but when you're at the start and at the finishes, having people from all over the world join in, and you don't need to even speak the same language, but you speak the same bike, right? And you're all there for the same reason, and you're all a little anxious or a lot anxious. And so it's fun. I mean, it's going to be good. I think it's going to be a really fun year. You know, weather's always a surprise. So,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
this year, Denver has turned into Portland in the past month for some reason.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think it's going to be a good fun race this year. I think it's going to be some good competitions, a lot of new faces we haven't seen.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be great. And then
Yeah.
of course you got George, who thought, you know, to celebrate his 30th anniversary of RAAM and riding his first RAAM, he's going to ride the whole course again. So um, we're sending him out on Tuesday with the solos so he can make it to Annapolis and still announce the finish.
What do
Not
you
every
think,
mile. I'm
George?
going with Sylvia Moss.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Congrats
no,
on that.
I'm excited to. I just started thinking about this last year, and I was like, I want to come back, and it's the 30th anniversary since my first finish,
Yeah.
and I want to ride every mile. Well, I want to just ride from the start
Yep.
to the finish. I mean, obviously not every mile because I'm on a two-person team,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
but that's my
congrats.
favorite division.
But
That's great.
it is cool, Alex. Like, you know, I mean, George and I have stood on the stage at the finish line for what, the past 10, 12 years, George?
No,
And
more than that.
14
I've
years?
been there since 2009.
Yeah, 14 years. So, you know, we have endured a lot of hours on the stage, and it's every second's worth it. I mean, you guys has finished. We've talked to you on the stage at the finish line on your teams, and it's, you know, no finish is a bad finish, and it's so fun on our end to get to talk to the racers after seeing them in Oceanside. You know, the excitement level is very different. Like, people are excited at the start, they are very excited at the finish, but it's very different type of excitement, and it's cool, and we're super excited about it on our end. I mean, it's always
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. You know, you touch on something too, and I'll kind of elaborate a little bit more on it. I think what's great about what you guys are doing and what the teams do is how I'd say the majority of the teams tie themselves into a foundation, right? And use it as almost kind of a more of a charity event as well. You know, I've done that for the last 3 years. I'm going to be doing it again this year. I'm going to be riding for my really good friend and RAAM teammate, Rasan Bahati. So, you know, that's why I'm doing it this year, you know. And just to kind of put a little, you know, why I'm doing it for him is that this year we're going to focus on, you know, obviously the Bahati Foundation is really about giving back, and Rasan has just done some incredible things in, you know, in the sport itself. And you look at his resume, it's just, I mean, incredible. But, you know, you also look at his story, which I think speaks volumes, and what he wants to do and give back to, you know, underprivileged kids. And we've always in the past with, you know, why we've ridden, that was the reason for it. And this year, instead of just kind of helping bring awareness around the foundation as a whole, what I'm going to be doing is, for the second year, Rasan is doing a big fundraising event to raise money to send 6 kids to go race at Steamboat Gravel Race in August in Colorado. He did it last year for the first time, and it was an incredible success. He raised a little over $25,000, brought kids from all over the country, you know, 6 of them, and really gave them a first-class experience to go to a race that they can really feel what it's like to, you know, travel, do the race itself, just go through the entire experience. And I thought that was great. We need to get more kids into the sport, and I'm going to be doing the same thing again this year, is to help bring awareness around the foundation, but specifically all of the donations that we raise for the efforts that I'm doing for RAAM. That's going to go towards the Steamboat Gravel, you know, event that the Bahati Foundation is doing this year.
That's super cool. And why don't you let us know how to donate to the Bahati Foundation? Because it is cool. And Rasan is a world-class, great guy. I mean, forget the fact he can ride the bike like a beast. He's just a great human being.
Yeah, no, you can go to the Bahati Foundation website. I believe it's bahatifoundation.org. I'll send it to you guys so you can go ahead and post on here. But he's got all of the events, everything about the foundation is on the landing page too. There's a specific link on there for the Steamboat Gravel race that you can donate to. So he's a great dude. I tried to twist his arm to be my teammate this year, but you know, it didn't work in his schedule and everything that's going on. So he knows, like right now, he knows every year I'm going to come at him for it. He's one of these guys that you drip on him long enough, he'll give in, but it didn't work this year. So maybe next year, but who knows? We'll see.
Well, Alex, I know you and I need to get out and do a little training, and really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us on No Stages. Anything you want to say in conclusion?
Yeah, I do. Just a couple things. I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Like I said, you know, when I tell people that I'm doing this race, it's kind of hard to put into words. And I know it's not easy to coordinate and organize something like this. It takes an army of people to do it. And I'll tell you, every year that I've done it, I've had just the best experience. So, you know, props to you guys. One of the things that I do want to do too is I want to make sure that I give a big shout out to, you know, the companies and, you know, the people who are actually enabling me to do this. I mean, I'm not getting paid to do it. I think that that's great. I remember, you know, listening to a couple of podcasts where some interviews of some previous racers, and the host that was interviewing them had brought some stuff up. It's like, you guys need to get paid to do this. And I don't know about that. I think it'll change the landscape. And I don't know if, just personally, I hope you guys don't do that in the future, just because I think it level sets the playing field. But it's not cheap to do RAAM or RAW. And I've been really fortunate over the last 3 years to have a ton of support from friends, family, colleagues. And for this year, I just want to give a big shout out to Word and Brown. They were a big sponsor for us in 2021. Cherry Tree, which is a financial company who the CEO of the company was actually a teammate of mine in the 2018 RAAM 4-man team that we did. Giant's going to be supporting with equipment this year too. Hyper Ice stages. I've been training on their Smart Bike, which has been incredible for me this year. Hyperwear, and then also Cycle Bar. So I just want to give a massive prop out to them. I know they're going to listen to this podcast, but I'm incredibly appreciative of the support that they've provided and the belief in what we're doing. But other than that, you know, thank you guys. I appreciate, you know, you guys for what you're doing. Super excited for this year. And, you know, I'll see Rick, I'll see you at the start line. Well, I'll see both of you.
Yeah, you'll see
at the
both
same
of us.
time. I'll see both of you guys coming up here soon. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. You know, we put on the race for you guys. Without you guys, I don't really have a job, and you know, George has to be a nurse full time instead of doing this. So
yeah.
But no, thanks a ton, and we'll see you in Oceanside in a couple of weeks.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.